And we are back. Week 37, we are on day 5, and we start the second half of the book of Daniel, chapters 7, 8, and 9. We move from a narrative structure to now what is known as apocalyptic literature. Now, when we hear the word apocalyptic today, we often think about the end times, the end of the world, and usually a lot of suffering that goes with it. But apocalyptic simply means revelation or unveiling. In this case, revealing God's purpose. And this is true of Daniel here at the end of the book, as well as the book of Revelation that's found at the end of the New Testament. It's a literature that involves visions and symbolic language, and its focus is on the heavenly perspective of earthly events. Apocalyptic literature is not easy to interpret and understand, and it's not meant to be. Here in Daniel, we see a court officer writing about and probably even against the powers to whom he is a servant, to the Babylonian kings. And so he doesn't want to come right out and say the king is a nut and the king is not in charge. He could he could find himself on the wrong end of a lion's mouth for that. But he wants to communicate what God's purposes are and what God's perspective is of current events. Don't worry about trying to understand this too much. Like a lot of apocalyptic literature, it's more meant to be understood after things happen so we can go back and with more 2020 hindsight and go, oh, God showed that he knew what was going to happen, and less so about warning us, other than in general terms, about what is to come. And when warning us, it's more about how our behavior should change and not worrying about the behavior of others. And so we see here in this particular section of chapters 7, 8, and 9, two visions. The first of them purport to show us four beasts that represent different stages of political history. The most popular interpretation is that these four beasts represent the Babylonian Empire, under which they are in exile, the Persian Empire, that will ultimately overcome the Babylonians and thus be in charge of the Israelites, the Greek Empire, and last but not least, the Roman Empire. And if we were to compare those with the four empires that would demonstrate authority and power over the Jews and the Israelite nation, particularly from this point through what's known as intertestamental history between now and the Gospels as they're written by Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John, we'd see that those are actually true. But these apocalyptic images, they're not meant to be perfectly understood. They're meant to be a warning and a reminder that A, God is in control, and that B, we need to follow the God of the universe. Are we living up to the heavenly perspective of what our lives are meant to be today? That is the question that we need to ask ourselves.